Welcome to Resilient. My name is Mike Kearney, the Risk and Financial Advisory CMO. We are now well beyond 10 episodes. I think we're up to 15 in confronting the COVID-19 crisis series, and we are not stopping. That's because the issues and opportunities you are dealing with grow by the day. And more importantly, there are a number of voices that need to be heard. That's why this new Resilient series is so important to me, to give you actionable guidance and to hear from people who are leading and advising companies through the crisis. Today, we are diving into workforce transitions. I'm joined by Lisa Buckingham, Lincoln National Corporation's Executive Vice President and Chief People, Place, and Brand Officer. Lisa is joined by Tina Whitney, who is a Human Capital Managing Director at Deloitte. I am really excited to learn from both Lisa and Tina. You're going to find that their energy is infectious. I plan to get into how Lincoln is planning their reentry strategy, criteria that companies should consider for reentry, how leaders are responding to the needs of their employees, and how COVID-19 has helped organizations become more agile. I always love speaking with leaders who really believe in what they do and are 100% real. I think that's what we're going to hear from both Lisa and Tina. So let's get to it. Lisa and Tina, welcome to Resilient. Much of the conversation today in the news, online, really focuses on all of the issues related to COVID-19. Things like, people with the virus, unemployment, reopening the economy, the next wave, which hopefully there's not a next wave, and so much more. And I don't want to really dismiss all of these real challenges that people are experiencing, because people are experiencing hardship. But I also believe that there's oftentimes, good that comes from crisis. And so the question that I wanted to kick off with is, Lisa and Tina, what gives you hope for the future? So Lisa?
So it's such a great question. And so thinking about what gives me hope for the future, I have seen so much positivity come out of the COVID-19 response, much more compassion, much more, really checking in with people. And so what gives me hope is that there's some silver linings here, that we're really being provided an opportunity to think differently about how we work together, how we treat one another, how we speak with one another, how we really open up even a conversation. There's a lot going on right now, and I know we're going to touch that today, but I'm just thinking hope, compassion, more focus on how people are before you're jumping into work.
I totally agree, Lisa. And one of the things that I love is that oftentimes you get in a conversation with a colleague or a client or whomever, and sometimes it was superficial. And I think now we're being afforded this opportunity to get to really know people. And then it makes work that much better. So I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
Tina, how about you? What gives you hope?
It is a great question. For me, it's somewhat similar, but what I've seen is just more collaboration and personal connections coming out of the way we have to work in this virtual environment. I mean, think about it. You're actually inviting people into your home, and that automatically, I think, breaks down some barriers. What I'm hopeful for is that when things do start to shift again, that we keep that personal connection and connectivity that we've gained through this process.
Hey, Tina, it makes me smile when you talk about inviting people into their homes, because we've had so many employee comments around our different town halls or big meetings that people just feel closer to senior management and to everyone because they're seeing their backgrounds or their kids or their dogs barking. There was really a grounding that I think has happened. So I think that's a really big piece of this, that personalization.
It's like people are actually real humans. It's awesome, isn't it?
Yeah,
exactly.
The thing you said too, Tina, that I just want to pick up on because I think it's super interesting. You said there's more collaboration and stronger interactions. And if you were to have said that before we went into this virtual environment, people probably would have thought you were crazy. It's like, how do you collaborate better? How do you have better interactions when everything's virtual? But I totally agree with you. And I think it goes back to that point about being able to kind of be more authentic and real real with people, looking into their homes and their personal lives. It just makes it so much better to work together. So I love the things that you guys have picked up so far. Lisa, so I want to talk about your role because you do have a bit of a unique role, which I think is actually extremely interesting given COVID-19 and how it's allowed you to operate. But you are responsible for people, HR, kind of place, real estate, and the brand at Lincoln. And so the question I have for you is how does having these three roles, or how has having these three roles helped you lead during COVID-19?
Oh my goodness. Okay. So I think that it has been a gift to myself and to the organization. But let me add one more thing in there, business continuity and crisis management. So people, place,
so you're a busy person. It sounds like you got a lot on your plate.
Busy, but I have an amazing team, and we really have a matrix organization on business continuity across and deep into the organization. So just thinking about it from the perspective of from our strategies, when we were looking at how will we confront, address, respond to COVID-19 very quickly, like in a very fast conversation with my CEO, we came up with three strategies. Number one, protect our people and their wellness. Number two, protect and run our business and help our clients. And three is do good things for America and ultimately the world. So if you think about it from that perspective, my anchors were in all of the people in place and brand, and we quickly pivoted from the traditional going into the office, and we moved over 48 hours. We went into work from home for 99% of our workforce. We were able to draw on the brand and communication side very, very quickly, even before the decisions were made. So we had a very, very compelling story to get people to the why and how this is going to work, and even down to the partnership with our head of IT and digital, who's just absolutely amazing. We even messaged on a Sunday night, when you go in on Monday morning to pick up any of your equipment or things you want to take home with you, take them home unless you have to unscrew them. And we knew that was a little bit of a, ironic thing to say, but what we were saying is there's a ton of trust in this movement. We're moving fast. We were able to provision 99% of our workforce with headsets, and if they didn't have a laptop, within 3 days. So we were fully operational. And so I would just say, from the real estate perspective, we own and lease, so there's different challenges there. And so we were watching what some of our partners where we do lease, we were watching what they were doing and saying, and we just made that ultimate decision after we did a deep dive into our business continuity plans that, hey, we're ready. And so I would just say to you, with my role, which is very different, but I'm starting to see that title across, I'm seeing that in different industries and in the financial services sector. I think it really brings it all together, but how it works is this is a deep partnering role. You cannot be command and control. This is about how are our businesses operating? How can I help them make sure that they're still making the impacts that they need to do? And our clients getting the right focus, and our employees, are they provisioned the proper way? And I have to tell you, one of the most strategic levers right now is our communications, our intranet, our mobile, one to go. And if I didn't have that portfolio, I just think it would have taken a lot more time for us to ensure our readiness. And it's really been magical. And I know we're all working a lot, but it's been good. It's been really good.
It's been good. That's good. So Lisa, when did you make the decision to move people remotely? And the reason why I'm asking is, do you think having those roles allowed you to make that decision earlier? Can you just talk about the timing?
Absolutely. So yes. So from my business continuity role, in late January, we were really watching what was going on in Wuhan. And we have a large group of contractors as well as employees that travel to Asia on a very regular basis. So we instituted the self-isolation upon return for 14 days in early February. but just because we were watching, we really didn't, think that it was going to be, as big as this breadbasket is. But then we really started doing deeper dives, later February. And it took us about a week to make the final recommendation to Dennis, our CEO. And then we had on a Sunday evening, one 8 o'clock call with our senior management committee. We had a 9 o'clock call with the HR council. And by 11 o'clock that night, we had a communication out to every single employee. We knew full well many wouldn't get it until they got to the office, but that they would know that they were just really picking up their things and going to be ready from a work from home perspective. So it was about a week that, we did some testing, remote testing, and we were confident. But from decision to implementation, it was less than 12 hours.
That's fascinating. Is there anything that surprised you through that entire process? Meaning, obviously, you probably have been thinking about this from a business continuity perspective, not at this scale, obviously, for quite some time. You probably have planned these things. You may have simulated them. Is there anything that surprised you? And really what I'm looking for, is there any maybe learnings now that you've gone through this process that you could share with other leaders?
Yeah, so one of my, and it's not a surprise, but it's a confirmation, was just the agility of our workforce at every single level. We're 43% millennial, and I have to say the productivity across all of our demographics was just so impressive. And the surprise is the fatigue that everybody's having from being on video or being on conference calls, or trying to hush your children or your dogs, and some of that is going by the wayside because you're like, hey, I'm really super productive, but my dog might bark, so that's going to happen. But what I would tell you is the surprising piece was how turnkey it was to make the decision and how productive we were. And I really, I think our employees have put so much effort into ensuring our policyholders and our clients are supported, that they're probably working more, and we're really reminding them of off buttons and, balance and wellness. And we can talk about that in a few minutes, but just the agility was really a surprise. And then the other piece of how quickly everybody was really getting into the conversations that Tina and I were just talking about on, leveraging innovations, or I'm doing this, or thank you for showing me your house, I love it. People are walking around, and just all of that really, I think the willingness to be so open and the candor. And when people are struggling on a bad day, or really happy about a good day, we're closing business. Our service levels are still very, very high, above many of our metrics. So there's a lot here that I would say we've confirmed we can be virtual in many, many places. We have 1% of our workforce that, that's another just huge learning for me. The willingness for them to really be in the front for Lincoln. And we've done premium pay for those individuals, and we have highlights on our internet that they're our heroes, and I almost get a little emotional about that.
So. That's awesome. So let me go to Tina. Tina, so you think a lot about workforce strategy. You also advise many, many leaders, and now we're going through, as we've been talking about, this big virtual work experience, or experiment maybe. What opportunities do you think organizations have to structure work differently, and maybe even better in the future? And it almost kind of builds off on what Lisa was saying. It's like, we've done this experiment, it's worked. So now what you're thinking for the future, and what organizations potentially could do to structure work differently when we get back to normal, whenever that's going to be.
And whatever the new normal is, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's interesting. So, I've talked to a lot of organizations over the course of the last several weeks, really helping them think through A lot of the open questions that they're faced with. What does reentry look like? What should work look like? And what I found is that when organizations made the shift to working virtually, they essentially did a lift and shift of their departments and their teams to a virtual environment. And what we're really seeing now is that new working environment changes the way we work, how we manage, how we organize, the tools that we need to use, how we communicate. And really mastering remote work starts with building high performing teams. And organizations, I think, are evaluating first, what are the work outcomes that are required, and then resetting teams to face off against them. And, what we're seeing is that these teams are really starting to challenge the status quo. Again, because I think you've got a different level of collaboration and sort of a different level of commitment because everyone's kind of in this together. And I think organizations that adopt, the thinking that, you've heard this, through disruption, there will be innovation. I think they're the ones that are really going to be setting themselves up for the future and redefining what that future can actually look like for them. So I think it's a really exciting time for organizations. Also, I think what this situation has uncovered are where there are a lot of inefficient or manual processes, and how you can look to automation to actually help address that. So I think organizations are really taking a step back and looking at, we're working in a virtual environment right now, and that may not have been what we thought was going to be possible. But how do we kind of take this opportunity to look at our operating model and how we actually do work, and how could we do it in a different way?
Tina, you said something that really resonated with me, and I'm curious if you've seen an increase in this, and that is challenging the status quo. Are you saying as a result of kind of this new work environment that people are more apt to challenge the status quo? And then the follow-on question I have is, what should you as a leader do to inculcate that in your culture? Meaning, like, this is the opportunity to innovate. And I think there's some organizations where people are very apt to challenge and others that aren't. So two-part question. Are you seeing an increase, and what can leaders do to really kind of heighten that opportunity to challenge what people are doing?
So we definitely are seeing an increase in it. I would love to hear from Lisa on this too, to see what her perspective is. But as I'm talking to organizations and honestly just within our own, it's almost as if people are sort of freed, and they feel that they've kind of got license to do it because we're in this uncharted territory. People are like, well, that may have been how it's done before, but you know what, this is the environment I'm working in now. So what if we did this? I'm seeing also a lot of organizations connecting in different ways. So people saying, you should actually talk to this person. And there's no barriers anymore, whether they're
Right.
physical or geographic. It's getting on a call, it's picking up the phone, it's sending a text. It's like I said, it's like these barriers have kind of come down. And so I think people, whether it's conscious or not, I think they are just sort of running with it. And I think what's happening is I think people are getting excited by it, and they're feeling more empowered than they may have felt in the past. And so through that, I think you're starting to see, well, let's look at it this way. Or, you know what, we've got a different timetable now that we need to actually meet. So what's the best way in order to get that? Let's bring the best people to the table. They may not be the people that we normally work with every day, but let's get their thinking. So I think it's really exciting. That's what I'm seeing, and that's what I'm hearing. And on what leaders can do, I think they can embrace it. I mean, honestly, I think they should allow their teams to run with it, and they should promote when they're seeing these small wins or things that are being done in a different way, because I think that will only help to sort of spread the word. And I really do believe we're gonna see some innovations coming out of this within respective organizations. I think you could see it from a functional perspective, and I think you could also see it at the enterprise level.
Tina, I so agree with you on so many points. I was just sitting here thinking, in my mind, I was thinking, those that are going to really be successful, they're running with things. They're ideating. They're thinking through, what's the new normal? What can we do? How can we raise the bar for ourselves, our teams, our companies, our clients. And, one of the things that I was thinking about was we are really proving to ourselves that innovation is always going to be what we need to push ourselves on for whatever the next gen. And I think that the empowerment that people are feeling right now, there might be something underneath it, and I would love to do some research on it, but I have to wonder if some of it's survival. They're thinking, and we're all thinking of, we need to make it through this. So is it around the Maslow's hierarchy of needs under that innovation? I just wonder what the ethos is there. But I'm really seeing amazing things that maybe a year ago people thought that we were nuts, that we were talking about or implementing or working on, that was actually game changing. And now we're pushing ourselves as if that was just the new normal. And the only reason why we know it's working is because we were forced to, to pivot. So I think this is the time for everyone. And I really, as a head of HR, and I mean this from all my heart, I think that everybody's learning differently, how to work differently, how to communicate differently. And this is all of our opportunities to just continue to shine. And I'll be really interested to see how the talent marketplace changes now, and how hypos really feed into this, and your experienced professionals. I think there's going to be a huge learning for all of us on this piece.
I couldn't agree more. You know what? There's two things that I wrote down as you guys were talking. One is, I think there's a bit of bureaucracy taken out of the system. And so it's actually easier because we're all working with purpose. It's like we don't have time to be messing around with some of the bureaucracy that oftentimes exists in organizations. So I think that actually helps innovation. I also think that the other thing, and it kind of ties a couple points that you guys made together, and that is innovation always is best when it happens on the edge, when it's not in my opinion, when it's not a big programmatic thing, but when you empower employees to innovate. And I think given the fact that people are being put into a position where there is a need to challenge the status quo, and we're shining a bright light on all of these great ideas and innovations of people on the edge, that it just creates this environment where you really can move a company forward much faster than you otherwise would be able to because of all of those conditions that potentially limited it.
Completely agree. And Tina said something about the automation side of it. And what I will say, we've been on a digital journey for 4 years at Lincoln. I mean, before that, but big time, last 4 years. And one of the things that we said early on with our employees were, embrace this, don't be afraid of it. You're going to work on more strategic, heady stuff, and you're going to be co-working with technology. So we created this co-working relationship, and we name our servers, and our employees just have really embraced it. And I have to say, man, now people are going to be pushing us for more investment in digital, and what else can we do? So that's great. I mean, that's a nice problem.
That's great. Hey, Lisa, I do want to talk about re-entry. And I know that this is probably top of mind for you. I know it's top of mind for many businesses. How are you beginning to approach this at Lincoln?
So this is my first learning on this, Mike, is it's way more complex than the pivot to work from home, because you're really looking at the health and safety. You're looking from the standpoint of, wait a minute, so much of this has been working from a virtual perspective. Maybe those roles should stay working virtual. What should we look like when we return? How do we return to our clients or into the field offices? What is the right cadence and all of that? So the first piece of it is we've been doing Feedback Fridays ever since we went remote. And we ask our employees 2 or 3 questions each time. Now we have launched something we've named Project Happy Place. And that's our return to office and return to the field work stream. And it's really our people in place strategy as well, because we're collecting all of this amazing information. But we built a survey. Again, this is a much more detailed survey about how our employees are feeling about the return and the cadence and how it will look for them, and really getting into some personal questions too about how are they going to deal with childcare if camps and schools don't open back up. And so we're really getting down to, going back to that, our 3 strategies that I talked about for COVID-19, but anchoring into the first one of protect our employees and their well-being. And so we're working on that, and it really is pushing our thinking. And I have to say, when I speak to our CEO, Dennis, he will tell you he's really changed his mindset that everybody doesn't have to be in one place at the same time anymore. Like, we're proving that the telepresence can work, and that as long as people are all consistent using video, or we're all consistent using conference calls, I think that you have to have some team norms and stick to those team norms as you're building into your teaming. We may have a very high performing team, but it all changed when we went virtual. And how do you make that? Do you go backwards? Do you go forwards? You may be hiring new executives or new team members. We pivoted in 72 hours to a virtual recruiting and virtual onboarding. We've hired hundreds of people since March 15th. And wow. Seemingly it's going very well. Our interns in our undergraduate program, over 200 people, they're starting the beginning of June. And we're so excited. And we believe that this is just setting a new tone. And that's really, really important.
Lisa, first of all, I have to say, as I'm listening to you, I'm smiling all the time, because everything you're saying is so motivating to me, just as, somebody listening to it. So your employees are lucky. But what are they saying about reentry? So you're saying that you're surveying them. Are they nervous, excited? Where's their mind at? Now, obviously it varies, but.
Well, this is a really tough question, because we haven't gotten to the details yet. But I can tell you, within, I think, 4 days, 72% of our entire workforce responded. Tells you something.
Wow.
Okay, number one.
That does.
Number two, if I just rely on the data that we've already pulsed on, and it's about equipment, it's about ergonomics, it's about wellness, we've done benefits town halls. We've had thousands of people sign up when we thought we'd have hundreds, and people really don't know about their benefits, by the way, until they need them. And so we need to be more evangelists on this. I think on this piece also, when you say you're smiling, I'm smiling because strategic communications is like in my wheelhouse, like nobody's business. And it's just been so much fun to even bring people along on the scary parts, because if you're really transparent, you're authentic, and you'll answer those questions, you're building more trust. So I don't think any company will be successful post COVID-19 if they back down their communications. It's a new norm. And it's how you communicate. I think engagement surveys are part of our DNA. Always have been at Lincoln, but now, like, we're asking, and I really can't wait to give you the results when we do get the survey. And Tina knows, I'm just like, I'm chomping at the bit for access to the data, because I think the open verbatims and the one question about, are you ready to come back into an office is going to be really compelling. And that will set the trail for our return.
We'll set up a follow-up conversation. How's that, Lisa?
That would rock. I'd love that.
So, Tina, I have a question for you, just building off on this kind of reopening conversation. Once again, you advise a lot of clients. So what are you thinking, or what do you advise clients on criteria that they should use to make that decision? Which, once again, Lisa said, it's actually a really difficult decision. What criteria are you moving to?
Yeah, it is complex, and it is multifaceted. And the way that we're thinking about it and talking about it with clients and actually helping them think through this is sort of in 3 different categories. And the first one is really determining who should return to the office versus who should work from home. And so it's looking at by function, what is the work that's being done within that function, and then looking at the roles themselves to determine where they are most conducive to being done. And we call that kind of the business factors. And we actually have a pretty amazing tool that we're helping organizations by using it, where we've actually built machine learning algorithms to determine at the task level where work should be done. So what's the best proximity for that work? The other piece that we layer in determining, where the work should be done is the personal side, and we've been talking a lot about that. So we do a workforce and workplace sentiment survey, which looks at several different dimensions, everything from family context to what is an individual's virtual work environment, generational considerations, safety. So what are the considerations of the factors in which somebody would actually feel safe working, in an office environment, looking at productivity and innovation. And so we really believe you need to look at both the business and the personal factors, not just one or the other, but really need to look at them in totality when you're making decisions of who should come back to the office. The second thing that we look at is workforce and workplace scenario planning. So what are the different scenarios that organizations need to consider when they're looking at reentry? So it's everything from factors like is there going to be a vaccine, and then also looking at the cost implications as well, because depending on how many people you actually bring back into the organization, that has an implication from a real estate perspective. How much real estate does an organization need in the short term, but also in the long term? You don't want to be making rash decisions for something that might be a 3-year window. So working through all of that. And then the third is really, what does reentering planning look like? So how and when would organizations, come back? And, I will tell you, in all the organizations that, I've been talking to, two sort of interesting statistics. One is, on average, organizations are saying that they're probably looking at like 30 to 35% that they would, in a post-COVID-19 world, that they would actually have that percentage work remotely. The other is that when organizations do start to look to come back, so a phase one or an initial reentry, they're probably looking at about 25% capacity. And so really mapping all of that out and then determining what are all the things that you need to look at from a reentry plan perspective. So obviously health and safety aspects. What are the procedures going to be? How are you going to monitor? Are you going to monitor before somebody comes, into the organization, which from a CDC perspective is what they're saying is actually the preferred, versus you're going to do it on site. And if you are going to do it on site, what is the way in which you're going to do that? The workforce itself, so everything from the change management aspects, communications, training that the workforce is going to need. The workplace, what are going to be the new standards and the new protocols, policies and procedures, not only from an HR perspective, but beyond. And then what technology are organizations, going to actually use to support the work environment, everything from contact tracing, dealing with data privacy and information security challenges. So, Lisa is by no means understating the complexity of what reentry needs to look at. And so we're actually providing frameworks and decision matrices for organizations to actually work through all of those component parts.
And if I can jump in on that, Tina, and Tina's been an amazing guide for me and counselor, and keeping me calm, by the way, Mike, let me just say that. One of the things that, when we sit here thinking about a people, place, and brand role, so I have hundreds of millions of dollars in budgets and costs and things like that across the company. But we're looking at our employees and their return and how that looks. And Tina was talking about, probably in the beginning, 25% capacity. When you're looking at from an expense perspective for the company and for our shareholders, what I am trying to learn, and we're early days, so please understand, I'm just forming my opinions through certain learnings and really listening and learning from others. But would I rather spend a huge amount of money on a monthly basis for equipment, for heightened medical screening, for a portion of our workforce, or would we want to really watch that curve flatten, reinvest those dollars in more innovations and automation, and continue to have our employees growing remotely in many places? There's some roles, again, we will have brick and mortar, but I'm just wondering, what is the cost to this return? And that's the big question I have right now, as we're looking at it. And we have lots of facilities, so this is where there's going to be so many learnings for so many different companies. And I don't have a manufacturing plant, so manufacturing, you have to think about how they're going about it. I'm sure we'll garner a ton of learnings there, just in best practices. But I think about, again, how we went so turnkey to work from home. Where is that push and where is the rush? And obviously our clients are going to tell us what some of the rush is, and our distribution focus and how we're going to market will help inform. But it is a question of, do you want to be the first one out or in, I should say?
Right.
It's a good question.
Well, it's interesting because there's a lot of companies. I shouldn't say a lot. There are more and more companies that you're beginning to hear about that are saying, oh, employees can work at home forever. So some are already even starting to make that offer. I'd love to get your guys' thoughts, both of your thoughts on that. And then the follow-up question, you can answer this together. If you do that, how do you cultivate culture? Because I think that's the one concern that people would have. Although maybe in this virtual world, culture is actually improved, but given the fact that you're not there physically together. So as you move more virtual, especially some of these companies are saying everybody could do it. How do you maintain that culture? And maybe Tina, we'll start with you, and then Lisa, we'll come back to you.
It's a great question, and it's definitely one that I think organizations are trying to figure out right now. How do you take your on-premise culture and translate it into a virtual environment? And I don't think there's an easy answer, sort of straight out of the gate. But I think what organizations need to think about are, what are the cultural attributes of the organization that are the most important to them, and how can you foster that at the enterprise level, but then at the team level. And I do think we need to look at it that way, especially if whatever the percentage ends up being for an organization at the team level. If you just take something as simple as focusing on virtual team norms, I think there are big cultural implications there. So if you understand, the individual's context, so do they have school-age kids, elderly parents that they need to take care of, living alone, whatever it might be, and plan for and respect the flexibility and schedules that's required. I think also looking at things like insisting that people schedule breaks in the day, to take a walk, grab lunch, whatever it is. And then I also think it's going to be, putting some again, infrastructure in place to actually foster networking and sponsorship, because I think that's one of the biggest areas where I think people are potentially concerned with, a never coming back to the office, one organization recently announced. So those to me are sort of the both enterprise and then team. Looking at it from those two lenses, I think is going to be really important for organizations on the culture front.
The organizations that have come out early, and we thought we were one of them, by the way, and we made an announcement that we were delaying our return past any of the state shelter in place mandates in the various states that we're in. And so very intrigued, and I'm watching, and I wonder if some of those decisions were because they were ahead of the curve on technology. They tested, they learned, and this is just going to be game changing. And remember what I said about reinvesting. Maybe it's not real estate anymore. Maybe they're reinvesting in technology. But with what Tina was talking about on out of office and really balancing, we're doing videos. We have a couple of partners that we use for mindfulness and focus big time on mental wellness and financial wellness. And it's really coming very clear that people want a flex working arrangement. So it wouldn't be crazy to see 4 10-hour days coming, or something that people work different hours that, are not 8 to 5 or whatever the traditional work times are. So that's key. I think Tina was hitting on something. There is going to be a new talent expectation that managers and leaders are uberly amazing, and that they're building team cohesion. They're really building teams, and really not always just having conversations about work, making sure that there's virtual happy hours or coffees in the morning, or any of those things. But I think this is going to be a true test for managers and leaders. And I can almost close my eyes and see managers getting evaluated by their employees if they're developing them or not. And, maybe you reverse those questions in the future on performance reviews, because not everybody can pivot to this. But I think, if we just look at this from a canvas of our talent, they're not going to disappoint. I know there's going to be so many innovations, and people are going to rise to this occasion. High-performing teams will always be there. I think there's going to be a little bit more work and, more communications. So, and the last thing I would just say is what I've seen, and I hope to see more, expedited decision making. People, it just seems like Tina said, taking bureaucracy out of the system. No kidding. And, some of these decisions maybe would have taken 6 months before. We're making them in 24 hours. How cool is that? I mean, think about that for our shareholders, especially if we're making good decisions.
There is truly a new set of expectations because of the way things are working right now. And I think leaders will definitely need to make that pivot. And I think those that do are going to continue to see, I should say, sort of the effectiveness of these teams. That's kind of one point. The second is, I also think that, again, I think a lot of barriers will come down, or already have, as it relates to availability of talent pools and alternative talent pools. And so I think organizations, it's an exciting time, because I think they're going to be able to tap into pools of talent that they hadn't maybe historically, because again, it really doesn't matter where someone resides now. It's just not going to be a factor. You can hire outside of the walls of geography or others. And I also think it could open up opportunities for other groups of people. So people that may have had physical challenges of getting to a place, that no longer is a factor anymore. So I just think it's, and I think that organizations that really focus on this new availability of talent pools, I think are going to be so far ahead of the game. I truly do.
I'm like a little kid listening to all of you guys, because the thing that both of you have just kind of jumped all over is this almost customized experience for employees. And we've almost kind of had a one size fits all experience for many employees over the years. And I love this notion of really getting to understand the employee and then letting them structure not only their role, but how they work around that. And because what I personally found with people that I work with is, if you do that, the productivity is exponential. But to do this on an organization-wide basis, I think that's a game changer, and maybe an advantage that companies can look at this point in time.
Yeah. Lisa, when you were talking about the faster decision making, and I would love to get your perspective on it, but it's my observation that the C-suite is operating in a way that they may not have always historically done. I feel that they are all about, a singular purpose. And I feel like they are all working in concert with one another in a way that, we don't always see. And I think the outcome of that is faster decision making, the ability to innovate, the ability, you use the words, agility and being able to pivot. I think all of those are because of the way the leadership teams are actually working in a different way. And it's not for across, every organization, and different levels of it. But I do think that that's something that's being seen.
Absolutely. And I think that there was almost this alignment. I remember the night that when we made the decision to go to work from home, and we, as a leadership team, stacked hands. Since then, we've really put rigor into our, not that we didn't have rigor before, but a deeper level of rigor on our lean in issues, our lean forward issues, and how can we better communicate with one another? So we're documenting that every week. And so I think that that's really important. And I would also say that because you're staring at each other in a different way, meaning on the video, I think that there's an unspoken word of you're more focused on those conversations rather than multitasking. Think about the old days in the conference calls. Many of us, I'm included in that, would multitask. When you're on video,
right.
You're really holding yourself accountable to being a participant, So it's just subtle, but it's real.
It is so real
with that.
Yeah. So guys, we've got a few minutes left. I want to hold us to time because I know you all have important stuff to do. So I'm going to go through a few more questions. I really want to hit on this whole notion of well-being and safety because that is kind of paramount for most organizations. So Lisa, I'd love to start with you, and then Tina, I want to get your thoughts as well. But what are you doing as an organization to really address well-being? And then Tina, maybe if you could give some perspectives from other clients that you've seen. So Lisa, I'll start with you.
Terrific. So from a well-being perspective, we were pretty ahead of the game here. We introduced telemedicine about 4, maybe 5 years ago. We have a very strong EAP program. We're breaking out like our wellness programs for fitness. People still receive their discounts if they earn different points for their healthcare. So what we've done is we've elevated all of those benefits and we're talking about it. So we're doing podcasts. We're calling it Moments That Matter. And just recorded a podcast that we haven't launched yet, but we're launching it next week. And it was really around, financial wellness. And then the next is mindfulness. And these are really important because some people don't want to say how they're feeling. So the beautiful thing is our EAPs are completely confidential. Obviously, on the back end, we've been looking just at metrics of use, and it certainly has gone up. I remember during the financial crisis in 08, 09, we saw a lot of trends in our healthcare that we knew there was a lot of stress on the workforce. This one's different. People are talking to people more. People are working out more, fitness challenges, wanting to do yoga or doing virtual 5Ks, a lot of teaming going on that. And, we're just going to continue to amp it up. We waived copays for telemedicine. We encourage people to use it. We are encouraging people to shelter in place as much as they can. We're looking at all the different things for provisioning for health and safety that if you can think of, face coverings, gloves, sanitizers, what wearables will we introduce? We've done different wearables in the past, but today, is it about spacing next to somebody that you have a warning if somebody's too close and, contact tracing. So there are all these things that are really just like, whoever thought that the Matrix was going to show up in 2020, but here we are.
Here we are.
Yeah.
So I think I would agree. What I'm hearing is very similar to all the things that Lisa just talked about. I think that um, what we're seeing is organizations, really focusing on strong communications to let employees know what is going on so that they can plan for it. Not only from a well-being perspective in the programs that are available, but just what is the timing that you might be thinking of actually doing something. And letting people know so that they can plan for it. So communications, I think, is really key. The other is around sentiment, to really understand what people's sort of health and safety concerns are. So what do they need and want from a well-being perspective, both physical and mental, but then also the safety piece of it. And one of the biggest aspects around this is, with the use of contact tracing, how is my personal information going to be housed? And so alleviating, people's concerns around, that's just one example, but alleviating their concerns around what does safety mean, and how will organizations, actually tackle that. So those are the sort of the big picture things that organizations, I think, are really trying to work through on their employees' behalf. But I will just say, every organization I've spoken to, safety is the number one word. That is what organizations are hyper focused on, their employees' safety and making sure that they're doing the right things by them.
Awesome. So I've got a lightning round, and here's how we're going to play this. I've got 3 questions, very short answers, and it's going to center around what's one thing. And you'll know what I mean in a second. So Lisa, one of the things that I had read, and this was even before COVID-19, you had talked about the importance of letting people be themselves. What's one thing that you do to let people be themselves at Lincoln? And then Tina, I'll ask you the same question, obviously not at Lincoln, but how have you done that, or how you've seen clients do that? So Lisa, I'll start with you.
Oh my goodness, I love that question. I believe for me, setting the tone of authenticity is the first part of it. And, none of us are perfect. And what I love to do, especially with my team, we do personal and professional check-ins, and just to find out where people are. And we've been doing this for years. And from that perspective, I really think it breaks down barriers. And just from that perspective, you think about it that, hey, Lisa's she's super happy today because she had this great idea or she had a great weekend, something like that. Right.
How about you, Tina?
Very similar to what Lisa is saying. And one of the things that I do with my teams is have them talk about one thing that's unique about themselves. And what we do with that is people share, and it's funny, but what often comes out is a particular passion or an interest. And so what I'm doing on one of my teams right now is we actually have a weekly well-being / fun activity for 30 minutes, and every team member gets to choose what it is. It could be anything from like speed trivia to meditation. One person is a physical instructor, for an exercise instructor. So everyone kind of gets to do one thing and share it with the team.
You know what I think this gets at, and I'll get to the second of the 3 questions, but is the fact that everybody has this beautiful kind of mosaic of a life that they lead. And it's when you get to know them on that deeper level that the relationship builds. And one of the things that we're doing, since I lead marketing, we created this thing called Faces of Deloitte. And the whole idea was, how can we tell our people story, our leaders all the way down to staff, that gets at why they do what they do? Because I have a belief that people are at a place in their life and their career, which is kind of the sum total of all of their experiences. And when you get to know kind of that intrinsic or internal motivation, so much more interesting than just what the resume is. So I love your guys' answers. So, okay, second question. What is one thing that leaders can do to build trust? And this could be with customers, it could be with employees, or it could be with other stakeholders. But one thing that leaders can do to build trust. Lisa, I'll start with you again.
Be honest.
Be honest. Love that.
Be authentic and show resiliency, but be authentic.
Yeah.
Okay. Last question. You guys ready? But you guys have been awesome. This is like one of my favorite conversations I've had in so long.
Exactly. I was going to say the same thing.
I do, but
but you actually mean it this time? Yeah. Okay.
I do, exactly. It's like I'm totally inauthentic most of the time. So, so what one innovation that you've seen as a result of COVID-19 that will have a positive impact on the businesses or the world going forward? One thing. There's a lot, but I just want to hear one. So, Lisa, I'll start with you, and then Tina will close it with you.
Being productive without traveling and losing family time, and just really being able to optimize every single day. The lines are blurred always, but today, boy, we get to have the best of both worlds, and we're proving that we can do it.
Tina, before I let you answer, my daughter is going off to college in 2.5, 3 months. I've spent more time with her in the last 2 months than I have in the last 2 years. So totally agree.
Yeah.
So Tina, bring us home.
So I think it's kind of going back to what I had said, or at the very beginning about teaming. I think people are teaming in very different ways, and I think out of that will come innovation in a variety of different forms across the organization. So to me, it's all about this new way of teaming.
Awesome. Lisa and Tina, thank you so much. We went longer than we normally do, and that's because you guys are awesome. And I'm not saying that, like, the answers were incredible. I'm seriously inspired. I always think about this in terms of, like, what do I hear from guests that I could pull into my clients or the people that I work with, and there's a lot of nuggets. So thank you for that. And I could have asked 25 more questions, but we have to close it at some point. So thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it was fun. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Lisa and Tina, thank you so much for your insights, your candor, your openness. Like I shared during the conversation, your energy was infectious. And I truly loved hearing everything that you're doing for reentry and really motivating your employees during this difficult time, and also hearing about what organizations should do and think about for transitions. We've covered a lot of topics over the last month, and we have, like I shared at the beginning, an incredible backlog of guests. We're going to continue to bring you insights from those confronting the COVID-19 crisis. But if you have any topics, or if you want to hear from somebody, hit me up on LinkedIn or Twitter. And for more insights across all aspects of COVID-19, just go to Deloitte.com on our COVID page. You can also listen to the Resilient Podcast on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play, and even Spotify. Until next time, stay safe and remain resilient.